So in terms of thinking about writing and words, I'd just like to read this other section, which I gave you a copy of. But this is, again, from Joseph Campbell's Creative Mythology. And it sort of summarizes some of the things we're talking about here in terms of art. And I think this creative mythology may be out of print, or else you have to buy the whole set. But you can. I bought this as a used book on Amazon. It came in 2 days, and no problem.
That's the only one I own. Like you, I only read. Well, I don't know if you only read that one.
No, I read all of them, but
yeah, that's the only one I would.
But this is.
I liked Campbell a whole lot, but
yeah, but I just think some of the things he says. Okay, so he's talking about symbolic speech here. He says, the best things cannot be told. The second best are misunderstood. After that comes civilized conversation. After that, mass indoctrination. After that, intercultural exchange. And so, proceeding, we come to the problem of communication. The opening, that is to say, the one's own truth, and depth to the depth and truth of another, in such a way as to establish an authentic community of existence. I've already said that the mythology of which we are treating in this volume springs from individual experience, not dogma, learning, political interests, or programs for the renovation of society, and the type of experience of which we have been reading in the words of Heloise and Rabia, Gottfried, Dante, Wagner, and Joyce, has been the innocence and majesty of love. I am aware that their experiences differed, and that what Heloise, Gottfried, and Wagner called love, Dante condemned as lust in Canto 5 of the Inferno. However, the innocence and majesty of his own emotion, Dante never doubted. And what we are discussing here is not what men have thought of others, but the force of their convictions based on experiences of their own, and this we may well call faith, or as Ortega y Gasset's sense of the term, individual faith, in contrast to collective. Not faith in what one has been told to believe, or in what, for the earning of money, political office, or fame, it may be thought propitious to believe, but faith in one's own experience, whether feeling, fact, reason, or vision. For as Ortega remarks, it is not in man's power to think and believe as he pleases. He continues, one can want to think otherwise than one really thinks. One can work faithfully to change an opinion and may even be successful. But what we cannot do is to confuse our desire to think in another way with the pretense that we are already thinking as we want to. One of the giants of the Renaissance, the strange Leonardo da Vinci, coined for all time the adage, he who cannot do what he wants, let him want what he can do. The socially authorized mythologies and cults of the classical and medieval, as well as various primitive and oriental traditions, were intended and commonly functioned to inculcate belief, and in salient instances their effectiveness was such that they determined the form and content of the most profound and personal experiences. No one has yet reported of a Buddhist arhat surprised by a vision of the Christ, or a Christian nun by the Buddha. The image of the vehicle of grace, arriving in vision from untold depths, puts on the guise of the local mythic symbol of the spirit, and as long as such symbols work, there can be no quarrel with their retention. They serve no less effectively as guides of the individual than as stays of the social order. Blah, blah, blah. I really liked that statement, because it really is saying why art is so important to us, because it really is. And it's something that Lucas talked about in his interview, actually, that art is, and movies primarily, and television programs, I guess, are the main way that we convey our society and what we believe, and how we are as human beings. I mean, maybe we're all sick of certain events on television the last 18 months, but that pain will soon be over.
Replaced by another.
Right. Replaced by another, no doubt. But in some way, they tell us who we are as human beings, as Americans.
Like a synthesis of the.
Yeah, I mean, let's think of God touching Adam in Da Vinci. Is it Da Vinci's? Michelangelo. I'm sorry, Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel ceiling, right, where God is, pointing, and Adam is touching God's finger, and that's the symbolic for psychic energy, or the coming alive of humankind, and God creating Adam, let's say. And I often think of that image, although I know that consciousness didn't come from a creature who came out of the sky and touched the finger of a human being.
You know that Darwin song, The Christians and the Pagans?
What is it?
Yeah. The Christians and the Pagans, they're getting together. It's a little happy song. But she says, you see magic in your God, we see magic everywhere. That sort of,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, yeah. So it made me
So
think of it. Here you've got God doing this thing, and then the pagans have just got magic everywhere.
Right, but I mean, obviously the artwork imprinted on me. I don't know if it had the same influence on you folks when you saw it, but
well, it's an incredible feat of at least craftsmanship and design.
Well, what?
That was a nice sidestep.
What, the painting or the creation of man?
I don't know.
I'll let the mystery be.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
Well, you get to that. All of this stuff is just making things swim up in my mind like consensual hallucinations.
Right. Some of these things, the point is that they are symbols. For example, Jung's rock, which was, his cube that he carved, that he actually chiseled out all the words on and the images on when he was 75 years old. It doesn't seem so hard to me now that I'm 70, but if I was a stonemason, maybe I could do it, and he certainly had been a stonemason most of his life. But that stone is numinous to me.
Yeah, but he's talking in the front part of the section. The author is talking about ordered stones in the fields of France, for instance.
Right.
So, I don't know where he's going with that.
Well, the point is that they're symbols of something, right? And so, just to finish my thought about the Jung stone, is, I've never seen this stone. I've seen pictures of it. I know what it says. I've seen translations of it. But, that stone is one thing that I'd really like to see in my life. It's numinous to me. It's a connection to Jung himself. And I'm not even sure you're allowed to go there. I know that in general, they don't allow people to go through
It's at the castle.
Yeah, it's in Bollingen, and so, but I'd really like to see that stone.
Well, that's art. I mean, with the symbols and the language and everything that he carved into it. But
Mhm.
I guess I hadn't
Yeah, but
reached
just
that part of the chapter yet.
yeah, but just knowing that that stone is attached to him is numinous to me. It makes me emotional to
Sure.
talk and think about it, and so obviously all of these things have huge symbolism for people going forward, and they're really messages in a bottle. They go back to the Lucy movie that I was talking about earlier in the summer, where what she leaves behind is a thumb drive, and because the professor, she knew she was dying from the beginning of the movie, and you say, oh, she's going to die and within a day, but the movie doesn't let you worry about that too much. But at the end of the movie, huh?
No.
No, it's so active, but at the end of the movie, she hands over a thumb drive, and that's what artists have always done: is they've left behind a message in the bottle, one way or another, whether it's a painting, a sculpture. Obviously, the artist that did Aphrodite of Rhodes certainly touched my life 2,000 years after his work, and obviously Michelangelo did David, and God, you look at that thing. That I read an article about it, by the way, and that stone sat there for 50 years. Okay, and two other artists had a go at it. It was a huge chunk of marble that was in some way deformed. They didn't like it. They didn't want to use it for, I guess, a column or something like that.
Anything important. Right?
Anything important, right? So apparently this stone sat there in Florence or wherever, I think in Florence, for 50 years, and two other artists had a go at it, and then Michelangelo came and worked on it, and it took him, I don't know, 4 years or something to actually do it. Think about what you'd like to do. There's choices. Okay, one choice is to talk about memories, dreams, reflections. This is Jung's, what serves as his autobiography. It's actually the autobiography of his psychic development. It begins with his boyhood, and so it would be fun to talk through that in a way, and it's like 10 or 11 chapters worth, and also there's a very good audiobook of memories, dreams, reflections, so you can listen to it when you're driving. I've listened to it about 3 times while I was driving. I really like it, and so we could talk about that. Another choice would be to read Symbols of Transformation, which was his first book in his main collected works, and the book that, well, actually, it's not number 1 in the collected works. It's probably number 5 or something like that, because they collected a bunch of his papers before that. But that was the book that caused the break with Freud, and it was called Psychology of the Unconscious in 1912 when it was published. And there is a terrific audiobook of that, of Psychology of the Unconscious, which is the earlier version, but then 40 years later, Jung revised and updated it based on everything he had learned in the 40 years, including he wrote that before the Red Book, and before the experiences of the Red Book. That's the most important aspect of it, that it was his thinking prior to the Red Book experiences. Or we could just go ahead and blast away at the Red Book, that's an intense experience.
Well, the Red Book has the translation in the back, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's everything that's in, is it Swiss? What do you call that language?
Well, it's in German.
In German?
Right.
So it's all that German that's in the
front.
illuminated part
Right.
is
That's
translated
his
in the
calligraphy.
back, right?
He
Okay.
hand calligraphy. He put the hand calligraphy just like a medieval monk.
So is there a tie-in to the pages with the translation so you know what
Yes.
Okay.
I've seen the interior.
Pardon?
I haven't seen the interior of the book. So.
Well,
was looking at it today.
it's in the
It's
collected
really
works.
magnificent.
In the Dropbox,
Okay.
if you look in collected works, you'll find the Red Book.
I didn't realize he was such an artist.
Yeah,
Talented artist.
and he was an incredible artist. Really, I mean, the paintings that are in that book are just remarkable.
He makes me feel lazy. His body of work there.
Well,
He's like,
it's
it's-
kind
Why am I
of
sleeping? I'm
it's kind of funny. I read a tongue-in-cheek description of various psychologists over the years, and one of them said, "Well, this was a guy that had sort of an extended vacation for his entire
Oh,
life."
is that what it was? That's what
Doesn't
you
have to
mean,
work.
okay.
Right.
I guess that would help things
Well,
along with-
he did work, and he worked hard. He worked hard as a
Well, writing's hard work. It
Right.
Into the
Yeah.
creation.
right, and
We
he
can't
And
discount
he
that.
didn't have to
It
get up and
wasn't-
go to a job. And
Okay, so he didn't
Yeah.
have to make a build, you mean?
Right.
Okay.
He didn't have to worry
Well,
about
worried
bills,
about Bill, but, yeah.
right? Because he was married to the third wealthiest woman
He
in
left you the
Switzerland
red
or
book.
something.
Yeah, I got a red book, but it's in storage in New Zealand. So.
Right. But are you planning to go back to it, or?
Don't know. Some days I just don't know.
Yeah, well, that's fair enough.
That's another story.
But I might have a symptom.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Well, or you can just get a reader's edition of it, or you can look at the electronic version, which is in the
I
Dropbox.
just remembered that's in there. Yeah.
Pardon?
I just remembered that's in there.
Yeah. So it's the nice thing about this discussion group is that I'm making all the readings available to
Thank
you.
you.
But the ones that I couldn't make available, so that's 3 choices. Another choice is to read one of the other writers about archetype.